Good morning, everybody. Today is Saturday, April the 2nd, 2022, and welcome to a brand new edition of the Kingdom Driven CEO. First and foremost, as we begin today's episode, I want to thank you all for reaching out. We have taken a little break for about 3 weeks. We were on spring break with our family, and I thought it'd be good to just kind of get away and pray and ask for God's direction as we move forward in this podcast. And then we played a really intense Little League baseball tournament last weekend, and so I am now officially back in the saddle, and thanks to everybody that reached out to ask us to get back going again. I'm really, really happy to be here. And so I am going to start our new series, if you will, on the concept of 94X and what does it look like to really implement 94X in your company. Okay, so let's just begin. There was a really famous quote back in Apollo 13. They said, Houston, we have a problem. And this was when they realized that an explosion had crippled their spacecraft and they were in trouble. And I feel like we have the same issue today going on with the church. And the reason I say it is just simply the statistics. If you look, according to a recent Gallup poll, America's membership in churches has declined for many years in a row and dropped below 50% for the first time in 8 years. In 2020, 47% of Americans said they belonged to a church, synagogue, or mosque, down from 70% in 1999. If you look, this is really across all sectors, but it's most prevalent among young people. So if you look, 66% of traditionalists, those born before 1946, say they belong to a church, 58% of baby boomers, 50% of Gen X, and 36% of millennials, and Gen Z looks to be roughly the same. So it's like the younger that we get, the less likely we are to be involved in a church. According to Barna Group's State of the Church study, practicing Christians are the same way. So practicing Christians identify as a Christian, agree strongly that faith is important, and have attended church within the last month. In 2000, 45% of people polled qualified as practicing Christians. Now just 25% fit this description. And as you might imagine, church attendance has plummeted as well. 36% fewer Americans attended church weekly in 2020 versus 1993. So the question becomes, how do we reverse this trend? And I want to stress that I'm not saying that church attendance is the be-all, end-all for your spiritual growth. It is not mandatory to go to church to be a Christian, but I do believe that God tells us in Hebrews 10:25 that it is important to fellowship and meet together. He says, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. So we know that he thinks it is important, and we know that we do not want to live in isolation, and we need others to encourage us in this life. So what do? Well, I believe that God has shown me that the answer lies in an equation, and that equation is 160 divided by 1.7 equals 94.12. Now, what am I talking about here? The average American attends church 1.7 hours per month. The average American attends work 160 hours per month, obviously 40 hours per week. So when you divide those two numbers, we have our employees at work 94 times more on average than they would ever be involved in a church. And this is important because I believe as Christian business leaders, we have a responsibility, almost an obligation, to shepherd those people. For the relationship to be more than just, hey, get in there and work harder and make us more money, they have to know that we care. And that is the concept of 94X, where you bring God's love into your organization. Now, let me talk about what this really looks like on a day-to-day basis at Regent Bank. So back in 2008, we started as an organization that was committed to Christian principles. So when we raised the money, we said we wanted to operate according to God's laws, God's rules, and according to His principles. That did cause us some investors, but to be honest with you, it wasn't a real active faith that we were doing. We really more just said we were always going to do the right thing. About 10 years ago, I joined a discipleship program called Influencers, and it really, really changed my life. It showed me that God wants us all to have an abiding, intimate relationship with Him, and that He wanted me to extend that into our work. And so I began to pray over our business daily. I started praying over our employees daily, listening to God's guidance for me. I would begin praying at our board meetings, and that was kind of the next step in our evolution, if you will. Then about 5 years ago, the Lord called me to start a daily devotional, which is every morning. It's at 8:17 Central Standard Time. The number is 888-630-4807. And in 13 minutes, we talk about the Jesus calling for devotional for that day, primarily around trust and thanksgiving. And that was a game changer for our bank and for many others. That devotional has grown from 7 callers initially to now over 135,000 unique callers have called into our devotional. So that was really a game changer. That devotional was voluntary. I put it on personally, not the bank, and I just invited our employees to attend, and many did. Then I felt the calling to start what we call Faith in Business series. And this is just a monthly breakfast where we have business sponsors, and a business leader each month will stand up and kind of give their testimony, talk about what the Lord has showed them, how the Lord has been there for them, and just how they integrate their faith into their business lives. We routinely teach from scriptures. We talk about the life of Jesus a lot at work. We have a voluntary prayer team that is about 20 people that pray every day over our employees, our clients, our communities, and constantly throughout the day, people are emailing the prayer team with a need for prayer. But probably the most important thing that we have done is we have began practicing what we call relational leadership. And this is basically where our goal is every other week to spend 30 minutes with our direct reports and never talk about work. We just talk about them and what is important to them and how we can support them in any areas that they might have challenges in their life. Now, these conversations may start a little slower, but over time, what we know is people become more comfortable and they'll share, areas of their life that they need help or support or guidance or advice. And it is truly magical. And I want to close today by telling you a quick story that I experienced with an employee recently along these lines. So I had an employee, we're going to call her Catherine, come into my office sometime back for these are 90-day meetings. I meet with all of our employees after 90 days. And so I asked her if she would just tell me her story. I told her I just wanted to get to know her better. And she is a beautiful young lady, mid-20s, came to us from a larger bank in Oklahoma, very, very well dressed, awesome shoes. And I thought she was from a, higher income family, probably went to a private school, private college, went to the big bank, and then was kind of working her way up by coming to us. Well, as I kind of probed a little bit in her life, and she finally opened up and started telling me about her life, here is what I learned. Catherine grew up in a very poor home in West Tulsa. Her father had left when she was 3, I believe. Her mother had had some real challenges, and so she ended up largely being the parent to take care of her siblings. She made it through high school, tried to go to college, had a hard time providing for herself and going to college at the same time. So she ended up working at the mall. While she was there, she met somebody from a bank, and they invited her to come apply. She got hired as a teller, worked as a teller, and then was noticed there and asked to apply for a higher level position, which she got. And she ended up hearing about our bank in the market because it's very much a family, a very caring organization, and she wanted to experience that. And so that's why she applied with us. But even more amazing was the fact that she had just gotten married, and her husband's brother had just lost his 17-month-old and 30-month-old child to DHS, and they moved the children in with her. So now she has never had kids of her own. She's taking care of these 2 young children, trying to find daycare, trying to potty train them, trying to keep them fed, trying to start a brand new job, and she needed support. And we had a wonderful conversation. I have been praying for her, and good things are happening in her life, but it was an awesome conversation, and one that showed me the value of relational leadership, because I had no idea what this young lady was going through. So I want to encourage you today to take steps to implement this 94X concept. And there are many companies that have this phenomenal kingdom culture. Beaten Bow Homes, you can study them in Lubbock, Texas. Trinity Staffing here in Tulsa. Imperial Coffee, Paul Timms, very generous. Glenn Shaw with Shaw Homes, David Edens, Eden Structural, David Stevens, KXOJ Radio, Bobby Nelson, Nelson Nissan Mazda, Scott Burnett with Burnett Windows and Siding, Thomas Hill with Kim Ray, David and Mark Green with Hobby Lobby, Jazzco, Steve Trice, Barnhart Crane and Rigging in Tennessee, Alan Barnhart, Coca-Cola Consolidated. I mean, it just goes on and on. Chick-fil-A. I mean, there are some amazing companies that have shown that you can have it all. You can have a kingdom culture where you bring God's love in and show it to those around you, but never force them to do anything. Our employees are never forced to participate in any way, in any prayer or anything that would make them feel uncomfortable. We just offer it, and that's what these companies do as well. But the result is a loving, caring environment, a wonderful corporate culture, better financial performance, by the way, and people's lives who are eternally impacted on a day-to-day basis. So I encourage you to be bold and take steps toward a 94X culture. And if this is something that I can help you with, just call me at Regent Bank, 918-237-4888, and I would love to visit with you about it personally. Thank you so much for joining the Kingdom Driven CEO today.